So advances over the years in meteorology have really added safety to getting people out of the way when we had these weather systems coming. If you remember that some of the most destructive, as in taking people's lives, hurricanes were back in the 1920s and that sort of thing. But ways that we monitor hurricanes include those drop wind sounds. Remember, they're dropped from airplanes. They're kind of like the same gizmos or similar gizmos to what weather balloons carry up twice a day, but they're dropped inside the hurricane so we can get a sense of pressure, wind speed, wind direction. We can have aircraft actually fly through the storm. We can use Doppler radar to understand, get a sense for what the direction and the speed of the precipitation is. And then specific to hurricanes and related to Doppler radar, we, or the meteorology people, the weather people, are pulling together information from multiple Doppler radars and kind of feeding them into a computer to then come up with, based upon the program, the computer model, come up with understanding what's happening within the storm. So what you're looking at there is kind of a composite Doppler radar image of Hurricane Charley. Now remember, for Doppler radar to work, basically you have to be looking at an echo. So literally you have to have, it's kind of a land sort of thing. We don't have a lot of radar out in the Atlantic Ocean. But this actually, I mentioned the kind of the new technique of this VORTRAC is predicting what the internal, the low pressure would be. And so the red line is the computer model running the data it's getting fed from the radars. And then actually, I don't know if you can see these orange dots here are what the real pressures were. So it's checking out pretty good. Now, and I don't have a slide on it, but if you're watching the news, you probably know that in the last year, or may have even in the last few months, we have actually, the National Weather Service has worked with NASA to send satellites that are actually now specifically designed to monitor activity, tropical cyclone activity. So another thing we can do is to kind of keep an eye on the temperature of the oceans, and I kind of mentioned that, I think, earlier. In the movie The Day After Tomorrow, if you've watched it, you'll know that an early scene is that there are these folks up in, I think it's Greenland, that are looking at ocean temperatures, and they notice a change in the ocean temperature and they know that something is up. But this is a slide we've shown before showing you Hurricane Fran, and then over here in a minute it's going to be Tropical Storm Fran, because the pressure, the central pressure has dropped, or excuse me, it's less intense, so actually the low central pressure has increased. But my point is going to be that out here, I don't know if you can see it, this actually is looking at temperatures and pressures. This is a good one. It says 149 and plus 7. 204 and plus 8. Oh goodness, I guess what I want to be looking at is the 79 and the 72. That's looking at ocean temperatures. And over here it's an 81 ocean temperatures. The warmer the ocean temperature, the more likely it is to feed the storm. And then over here, you can see it better. This is these little station models that says 80, 80, okay, 81, 84 is the temperature warm enough to sustain the hurricane. So the folks, there is an arm of the weather folks here in America called National Hurricane Center, and so they are responsible for putting out warnings and such. And so again, they use computers, they feed the computers what we call real-time data to anticipate or forecast what the hurricane's going to do. Kind of like we have storm watches and warnings, we also have hurricane watches and warnings. So the watch comes before the warning. And this is kind of some details on how accurate the forecasts are. They have, the farther out the forecast, the less accurate it is. So Here in a minute, you're going to see that there's something called a forecast cone, and it's called, sometimes I've heard it called the cone of uncertainty, where you can basically see the farther out it gets a lot of wiggle room in where it's going to land. Now, as you might imagine, it's the folks that are putting out the hurricane watches and warnings need to be careful, because they need to be sufficiently cautious, but if they're overly cautious, then it's like the boy who cried wolf, and you're going to get your public really kind of confused. I know one of the things that struck me about Hurricane Katrina was the number of people that stayed, and they stayed for various reasons. You know, I'm sure you've watched some of the documentaries I have. Some of them needed to stay, and some of them thought, it's not going to hurt me. So I mentioned the cone of uncertainty, and this is kind of what I was talking about. So the dark blue is the 1 to 3 day, day 1 through 3, and kind of the light blue here in a minute is kind of the 4 through 5 day. And you can kind of see how it broadens out. So it kind of fans out to, not quite sure which way it's going to go. Right? So, but they like to kind of get the word out as to where it might go. So this was this tropical storm Dean in 2007.